Welcome back for another video. A green arrow last game week with 67 points and the transfer rolled as well. Properly carried by my defence though, as Anderson hit a 10-pointer thanks to Defcons. Porra keeping a clean sheet, as did Romero, who also got an assist and a clean sheet himself. A controversial Romero goal ruled out, if you ask me. It was a header off a corner, and it was kind of just like the usual jostling that you see in the box on corners. And he scored it, but it was ruled out by the ref, and VAR didn't overrule it. Salah, of course, left it very late as captain, scoring from the penalty spot in the 94th minute, I think it was, for an 18-pointer. Gyökeres also scoring, a lovely ball squared by Eze. Still a lot of blanks though, Gakpo, Bruno, Rodgers, Reinders, Watkins. I really just need to hit one of those mega weeks where, like the majority of your team returns and it helps you move up the rankings fast. That all said, it's really important to be patient, especially this early on. Currently, 1 in every 4 managers have used at least one chip. I've used none so far, especially at the higher ranks as well. For example, 23% of the top 10k have used 2 chips already, 6% have used 3 chips already. Technically speaking, the best week to actually gauge everything is going to be Gameweek 19, when everyone will have had the opportunity to use all 4 chips. I don't expect many will leave it as late as Gameweek 19, so we should have a good idea earlier than that and how clear things are settling down. I am feeling committed to Wildcard in Gameweek 6 now as my chip strategy, with a bench boost to come in Gameweek 7 or 8. So yeah, this time next week it'll be a Wildcard team selection, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. I'll talk more about the Wildcard and the bench boost a bit later. Let's run through the team and plans for Gameweek 5 first of all, and we'll start with a quick look at how you got on. FPL Command Center used their bench boost with 21 points on the bench, really nice bench boost score. 98 points they got overall with a -4 hit. Shearman's dropped his mate in it massively here. He says, check out my mate's 42 point benched in our league. So he got 54 points all out, but 42 benched, which is absolutely mad. He had Pickford 6, Van der Ven's 14, Ruben 6, and Zubimendi's 16 pointer benched. I bet your mate's buzzing you've exposed him like that. FPL Matty used his free hit and says, 101 points on the free hit. Absolutely crazy score. That's a proper dream game week. Everyone returned in Matty's team except for Gakpo. FPL Tron guy didn't have the lowest score that was sent in, but says, Gudmundsson's own goal late defines my season so far. You really can't write it, can you? To score an own goal like that, in the 94th minute, header off a corner to wipe your own clean sheet is unimaginable. It's only happened to me literally once ever in all my years playing FPL, and that was Dino a few years back, but he did it in something like the 89th minute, so not quite as late as Gudmundsson. Last one then. Disaster of the week goes to James, who was 26k before last game week. It was 4.8k the week before that. 29 points all out with Haaland last on the bench for some reason. So yeah, 4.8k to 26k to 1.5 mil. Thanks for all the teams sent in. Let's get into the team for Game Week 5. In goal, Sanchez plays Old Trafford this week. There's a quote going around this morning from Maresca. He was asked in his press conference basically, who's going to be starting in the Champions League? To which he said, Sanchez will start and Jurgensen will play games in the Premier League, Champions League, FA Cup and League Cup. And he said, we have so many games that Sanchez cannot play all of them. So there seems to have been a bit of panic that he's going to be benched in Game Week 6. My interpretation, and I watched the presser itself, is Sanchez is going to start in Game Week 5 as well, but looking much longer term, there could be the odd week where Jurgensen plays in the league. So that is still something to keep in mind. Like Game Week 9 for example, Chelsea have got Ajax midweek, and then a few days later they've got Sunderland home. Could be that sort of game that he does it. I recall he did it once or twice last season when they had Southampton, I think it was. Obviously it's not great longer term, but I will have sold him by then, and on the off chance he doesn't play this week, Dubravka's a perfectly good backup anyway. So I'm playing a back 4 for the first time this season. It's Anderson, Pedro Porro, Murillo and Romero. It is looking a bit ropier for clean sheets this week. Liverpool top, but just a 40% chance. And I've got Anderson, who's actually 3rd highest, but only 32%, so we're talking like 1 in 3 chance. Spurs are on 18% to Brighton, and I've got Forest as well, 31% against Burnley. Anderson is the one player I'm definitely keeping on a wildcard in Game Week 6 in defence. He's just so good for defensive contributions. And he will chip in with, like 3 or 4 goal involvements over the season in all likelihood. And I noticed that he and Senesi actually rotate perfectly, very long term. And Senesi is also immense for DCs himself, so those two feel like a lock-in for very cheap as well. It's going to be hard to lose my Spurs defenders if they keep another clean sheet this week. They've both done pretty well for me overall, but Brighton away is a really tough fixture. Brighton's 6.83 expected goals ranks 4th highest in the league, though I think they've had a couple of pens. If we're talking most disappointing picks across positions, I think Rodgers and Wirtz have got to be the winners in midfield, Strand Larsen and Watkins for strikers. And then I'd think Murillo's probably got to be up there as far as defenders. He actually did hit the DEFCON threshold in like 30 or so minutes against Arsenal, but those 3 points were his biggest score of the season, and obviously most owners benched him like myself. The other Forest defenders, of course, have been bad as well, like Milenkovic has been popular, Aina, Williams, and of course now Ange's in charge. I think they're going to be unlikely to be as solid defensively. So it's probably his last week in my team for the season. If he doesn't play, then Estev will come in. In midfield, it's Salah, Gakpo, Bruno and Rodgers. Bruno's the only one of these four that I'm actually looking to keep on the wildcard. Though, from all my tinkering so far, it seems to be boiling down to going either Bruno or Semenyo. Can't have both in how I want to set up, so it's a tricky one, because Semenyo's got leads in Gameweek 6 as well. So, I'm hoping for some send-off points from, Gakpo, Salah, Rodgers particularly, who have been pretty underwhelming, or at least in Gakpo's case while I've owned him the last 2 game weeks, 2 blanks and 2. Salah's obviously got 3 returns, but no hauls, and some of those returns have felt a bit fortunate, like that penalty against Burnley. He had a pretty poor game again really, but the penalty bailed me out there. There is a temptation to play Dubravka over Sanchez so that I can avoid having Bruno against my goalkeeper. Burnley to me just feel maybe slightly likelier to concede, but it is really close. They were really organised against Liverpool of course, but they did still concede. 9.2 expected goals conceded this season for Burnley is far more than any team. I'm not rolling Dubravka out though in my starting 11. Those of you that are on the Sanchez and Dubravka pairing, which one are you planning to start? The good news is, after 4 months, Villa have finally scored a goal in competitive football, albeit 1 goal against Brentford in the League Cup and they still got knocked out. It was Elliott that was the scorer, who I expect actually probably starts against Sunderland. Rodgers and Watkins were both benched that match and they came on second half. I honestly just can't wait to drop them both now, to be honest with you. I completely misread Aston Villa this season. They've had great fixtures and they've done consistently well over the years under Emery, but it does feel like they've gone a step backward this season. PSR's massively limited their ambition and perhaps the players are a bit unhappy with some of the departures and maybe arrivals. Who knows, but yeah, it's the final week for both of them in my team. I don't know if I'll go back. Maybe if they turn things around convincingly later in the season. Of course, they need to start performing in a World Cup year as well. They're not even going to make the squad, so I guess that's something we'll have to keep at the back of our heads as well, like the motivation there for a lot of players. As the season goes on, who's fighting for a spot in the World Cup? Anyway, up front it's Gyökeres and Watkins. Gyökeres picked up a big cut on the back of his head / neck in the Champions League and he did have to have it strapped up before he could play on. It would probably be strapped up against City as well. Arteta managed that one quite well. He took him off a bit later, but still early, about 65 minutes, to save him for the City game. So it's Salah captain this week. I'm going Gyökeres vice. Can Watkins and Rodgers make it 5 straight games without a goal involvement? Or in fact, can Aston Villa make it 5 straight league games without scoring? My team feels a little bit ropey this week, so anything from them would go a long way. There's lots of teams out there that have got, like Mateta against West Ham, Wood against Burnley, etc., which I don't have the luxury of. So the bench is actually really tough this week. It's Dubravka, Estev, Reinders and Gue. Dubravka versus Sanchez does feel pretty 50-50, as does, starting one of Estev or Reinders in my starting 11. Do you think I've got it right here with this selection? I do need to try and factor DEFCONs into my thinking more, and Estev has a decent chance of getting them against Forest, I feel. So I've got 2 free transfers. I've got 0.3 mil in the bank. Now, it's going to be a waste of a transfer to spend one in defence. It's not like I can even afford Van Dijk in one move either. And none of the mids or forwards feel like worth selling either. As shocking as Villa have been, they do have Sunderland. So the plan is to roll the transfer. Especially now that transfers can carry over on free hits and wildcards. It's just not logical in my position to use 1 or 2 transfers for 1 week personally. Instead, I'll wildcard in Gameweek 6 and I'll carry 3 free transfers over and hopefully with a view to rolling even more. So a very early look at my wildcard and current thoughts there. This is where I'm currently at tinkering. Donnarumma, Dubravka, Rodon, Anderson, Gabriel, Senesi and Konsa. And then it's Enzo, Palmer, Dewsbury Hall, Reinders, Bruno, and then Haaland, Strand Larsen and Gyökeres. So this would be if I bench boost in Gameweek 7. Now, Raya on paper is slightly better than Donnarumma, I'd say, but I'm just not sure on Man City defender nailedness, and I would like to have some coverage of the City defence, which I still think is going to do really well. So I'm just wondering whether I start with Donnarumma, and then after a few weeks I could look to add Saliba, or maybe Timber or Calafiori in my team, like if one of the other fullbacks gets injured, or maybe they look like they're definitively backups to Timber or Calafiori. Maybe Vardiol is the one, and obviously he's had a couple of price drops. Strand Larsen would be in the team here, assuming that we get some news that he's back and available. It is still, at least a couple of weeks until the bench boost. I have also looked at a Gameweek 8 bench boost instead, and I'm not ruling that out, and I think that's a really interesting chip strategy, because that week, Burnley and Leeds face against each other, so you could have Dubravka, Estev, Rodon, maybe Foster as well as a 5mm third forward, who looks really handy for the bench boost. The problem is it's a 2-week gap, so there's more that could potentially go wrong, plus it's an international break in between. And then if you do go Dewsbury Hall, he's got Man City that week, so he becomes worse for the bench boost. Although you could go for someone like Stack, I suppose, for 5mm. It's a very early draft anyway, but the core players are Haaland, Gyökeres, Palmer, Bruno, Reinders, Gabriel, Anderson and Senesi. I should lastly mention as well that in Game Week 6, using 3 free transfers, I do have the option to do Watkins to Haaland, Salah to Palmer and Gakpo to Ndiaye or Enzo, and then I delay the wildcard. That looks great as well, but there is an opportunity to rejig the rest of the team at the same time and save 3 free transfers. Like if I can get up to 4, maybe 5 free transfers, that's almost a wildcard in itself with the amount of things you can do for free there. Thanks very much for watching. This time next week, of course, I'll be back with my wildcard team selection, so make sure you're subscribed. I'll see you soon for the next one.